Hey, I'm Gav from Gav Takes Photos, and this is my Sony A7R II. Now, I've actually had this camera for a good few years at this point, and I've shot many things with this camera. So much so that it's been my go-to shoot anything, anywhere, anytime camera that I've come to rely on. So I figured, now that me and this camera are going to be parting ways, it'd be the perfect time to do an end-of-term, long-term video review, I guess, on my experiences with this camera and what I think of it. Of course, we're going to go into the pros and the cons of this camera because there are a few of each, and I'll let you know exactly how it works for me, and you can make your decision on whether you think it's going to work for you. So let's get into the video and have a look around. Now, to kick things off, we're going to be talking about the specs of the camera, and I'm sure a lot of you watching this who are looking into this camera will probably already know the specs, but there will be a few of you who don't. So first of all, the main part of the camera, the sensor. You're looking at a 42.4 megapixel sensor. Pretty big sensor. Now, that doesn't have an AA filter, which means it's going to bring in more detail than an equivalent sensor with an AA filter. Not much. Might be noticeable on the big screen. Not so much if you're just viewing it on a phone, but it's there if you need it. Also, it's a backside illuminated sensor, which means it actually lets in more light than the older type of sensors that a lot of the other brands are using. In recent years, a few of those brands have switched to backside illuminated, but if you're looking at the older models from around when this one was released, they do not. More things to note are this has IBIS in it, and that has been really helpful for me with my longer lenses that don't have image stabilization, because although I do have a steady hand, when you're all the way out at 200 without image stabilization, things can get a little bit swifty. So it is nice to actually have that in the body, so pretty much any lens you put on the camera is going to be stabilized at least a little bit. I would say this isn't as good as some other brands in body stabilization. It is what it is, but at least you have something, which is better than nothing. Now, if you're looking at shooting sports or anything high action, this camera is probably not the one for you. It maxes out at a whopping 5 frames a second, which isn't much, but if you know the sport or the activity that you're actually going out to shoot, that might be enough, because you'll be able to time it correctly and get the shot, which is what I've done in the past. But that's up to you if you're one of the spray and pray types, or if you're the get the shot, get it once, get it right type. It's up to you. It's your shooting style. But it's just things to consider. Also, this camera only has one card slot, and I know that is a deal breaker for a lot of people who need redundancy. So if you're shooting weddings or something where a memory card failure would be a really big deal to you, this probably is another thing to take into consideration. For me, I'm just a landscape photographer. There's a bit of astro on the side and a little bit of projects here and there. So for me, it's been fine. I've never actually had a card fail yet. So the one card slot thing wasn't really an issue. But if there is an issue for you, then the A7R III might be the way to go for you, because that does have dual card slots. And the last little spec I'm going to talk about before we go out and go on a little walk, a little photo walk, is the fact that this screen on the back comes out, it flips around. Very nice, very nice. It's not a touchscreen, so if you're looking for a touchscreen, that ain't it. Although I do find it useful, especially if you're doing low level shooting. So bring the camera down, you can still see the screen. Again, bring it up, you can still see the screen. It's not as usable or as versatile as the flip screens are, but it's served its purpose for me. Now, one of the features of this camera that I haven't really put through the paces all too much would be the weather sealing, and that's basically because I don't want my camera to be broken by the wet. I have been out in the rain with this camera a couple times and it hasn't let me down, but, big but here, the battery tray, the weather sealing on this is well, it's almost non-existent. And I know that the earlier Sony models do suffer with water ingression quite easily, which is why I've actually decided to kind of refrain from going out in the harsher conditions. Now, that obviously has meant I've lost shots by simply not being there in the past, which has been one of the things about this camera which has actually kind of annoyed me a little bit, because I would like to be out in the harsher conditions, but I'm also very afraid of it just stopping working. So that has been one of the reasons why I've decided to sell the camera, amongst other things. But yeah, just something else to note down. If weather sealing is important to you, the later Sonys have much better weather sealing than the early ones, so yeah. I actually quite like the composition behind me and the view and everything, so I might as well film some more of the video here. Pros and cons. We're going to start with pros first. Pro, it's 42 megapixels. That's a lot of megapixels right there. That has allowed me to crop after the fact. I'm not advocating that you should always rely on cropping, but in a pinch when you need it, it's there, and you really won't notice that much detail loss with the amount of megapixels you've got with this camera, providing you've got a decent lens on. Number two, the form factor of the camera body itself. The camera body is actually quite compact, and I have enjoyed the compactness of the camera body. The lenses aren't that compact, but again, we'll get onto that later. But the camera body itself, really nice. Not the best grip in the world, but good enough. Hold it in the hand, it doesn't weigh too much. Good little compact unit, this. Another thing I like about this camera, although it isn't unique to this camera, is the fact that there's so many lenses for the Sony E-mount system. From Sony's range of G and G Masters to the older Zeiss lens that they put out. You've got Tamron, Sigma, Yongnuo, Samyang. Samyang is a good one. I've used a lot of their lenses and they're very good. So you've got all of the lenses which fit the E-mount natively, as well as if you're using something like the Sigma MC11 adapter, you can mount your Canon L lenses to this and they work on it without a hitch, as long as you're not shooting high action subjects. But for landscape photography or just static subjects like shooting a portrait where the subject isn't darting around the scene, you can adapt your Canon lenses to this really easily and it works. So yeah, that is number three, is the fact that you're sport for choice when it comes to lenses with this mount and with this camera. Fourth thing I like about this is the video features. I don't really hear many people talking about the video features on the A7R II, but it does allow you to record up to 4K, and that's really good. For the year this camera was released, that was really sort of unheard of. That has allowed me to launch my YouTube channel, has allowed me to shoot videos for people out and about. I've shot some videos for some client work and it's been great. It's actually really helped. It's not the greatest video quality in the world compared to likes of like the Lumix GH5, GH6s and stuff like that. They are much cleaner looking files, more crisp than this puts out, but this is a full frame sensor, so it performs better in low light, which is pretty useful for a lot of the things I've done. So yeah, it also allows you to shoot up to 120 frames a second, albeit in 720p, but that's still good enough for YouTube. It upscales quite nicely to at least 1080, so if you're shooting a 1080 timeline, you can use that feature and it'll be fine. Just a couple of other bits and pieces I like about it. They're not big enough to be necessarily their own points, but they're just things I like. I like the IBIS, as I spoke about earlier. I like the flippy screen on this, the in and out. I like all the focus features. The fact this says eye autofocus, that's great. Got face autofocus. You can choose different tracking modes and in stuff like that in the focus menu, and that's been great for me. It's been absolutely fantastic. Another thing I've noticed about this while using it, specifically at night when I've been shooting with other people on workshops, is this shows up the stars cleaner on the back screen here than any other brand I've seen out there. And we're talking Nikons, Canon's, what was the other one that other guy bought? One of the other guys bought a Pentax once, and for some reason their back screens, the stars were barely visible, and on this one it just seems to show them so much clearer, which means getting focus has been pretty simple at night with this camera, which has been a really useful feature shooting stars at night, shooting astrophotography, because it means I get to spend less time trying to fine-tune the focus when I can already see the stars on the back screen, and while everyone else is sort of tinkering and doing their thing, I'm already there, I'm already getting shots. So if you're into astrophotography, these cameras do surprisingly well at astrophotography. The high megapixel count shouldn't put you off. The fact that this has so much dynamic range has been a real help for astrophotography as well. The dynamic range of this thing is nuts. So with my older cameras, I was shooting Canon, and back in the day I'd have to bracket exposures or use grad filters in order to get certain shots, because the dynamic range of the camera just wouldn't allow that shot to happen any other way. This one just gets the shot. It handles shadow recovery better than it handles highlight recovery, so if you do look into one of these, shoot and expose for the highlights, you can raise those shadows up an alarming amount in post. I will show you an example here of one that I shot where I've exposed the image really, really dark, and it's just allowed me to bring that photo back to something viewable in post, which is absolutely mad. Something I wouldn't have ever been able to do on the Canon camera I used to have, because it would have just been a magenta mess, color everywhere. So that is a thing to look forward to if you're going to get one of these, is that dynamic range is absolutely mad. Alright, I guess it's on to the cons next. Alright, con number one. Probably the most complained about thing of this camera. So it's going to be of no surprise to you of me saying this, is the battery life is shocking. It's terrible. It's terrible. I carry 4 batteries around with me at all times. I haven't been out that long today. I've been out approximately 1 hour now, and I've only shot a couple of photos. I'm recording on a different camera right now, and I'm down to it not turning on. That had 40% battery when I just took a shot just a little bit earlier, and now it's on nothing. Yeah, I've probably taken, I don't even know, like 20 photos, and I'll turn it off in between to save battery, and it's not as if it's a third-party lens draining the battery or not working properly with it. Sony lens, Sony camera, Sony battery life. Love it. Love the battery life. Yeah, it's great. Now, this next con is going to be true of any full frame camera, so don't take it as a thing against this camera in particular. This is just an in general full frame camera issue. When I got this, well, when I first started shooting, I wasn't bringing my kids with me because they were too young to go to the places I went to go take photos. So it means I could bring this big old backpack with me, and it was fine, it carries everything. Problem now, they're old enough to come with, so carrying the big lenses of the full frame cameras has become a bit of an issue. Last time I went to Wales, I had to have my youngest, my toddler, on my back, which meant I only actually had enough space for this lens. Now, while I got some decent shots with the lens, it was quite limiting. So if the lenses were smaller and I could fit one in the front pocket, that would be great. I can't, because the full frame lenses are ridiculously huge. Now, I know there are the Samyang Tiny series, and they are fantastic lenses, but the versatility of zoom can't be beaten when you're up in the mountains. And yeah, only having one zoom lens on you, quite limiting. So again, like I said, this is not a dig at this camera per se, this is just all full frame cameras, is that the lenses, if you want good quality lenses, let me preface that, if you want good quality lenses, they're going to be big and they're going to be heavy, so take that into consideration. Also, if you're looking at the Sony lenses in particular, these older 24-70 Zeiss lenses, the f4 ones, they're pretty reasonably priced. They're not the best lenses on the market by any stretch of the imagination. It has major chromatic aberration, but it works. But if you want any actual G or G Master Sony lenses, you're going to be paying a lot of money. So yeah, if you're going to keep it in-house or Sony, you got to factor the cost into everything as well. And like I said, if you're getting the older Zeiss zooms, they're cheap, they're cheerful, and they work and deliver good enough quality for most situations. But if you want those best of the best G Master lenses, they're going to be massively bigger than this and just heavy, so figure that into your plan. Now the third one is, I know this camera's quite old. I know that it's quite old. It's quite old when I got it. The EVF in this is pretty low quality. It's not that great. It's kind of pixelated. You can kind of see the dots in between, especially if you need to get critical focus and you double zoom in digitally on the back to make sure you get focus. The EVF really does let you down in this aspect because it just isn't sharp enough to guarantee you've got critical focus. And even when I've had this locked up on the tripod and I've had my eye up to the viewfinder trying to get focus manually on some of my manual focused telephoto lenses has been a pain. Again, it's the age of the camera. It's a 2015 camera, so the technology in it was still developing at the time. This is Sony's second shot at a high megapixel full frame mirrorless camera, so take that into consideration too. I think that pretty much wraps up what I don't like about the camera. The list is short because there aren't that many things to dislike about it, as long as you can live with the bad battery life. You know, you'll be fine. Buy yourself a battery grip. It's what I did in the beginning. Load it up with a couple batteries, get some more time in the camera before you need to change batteries, or just have a lot of batteries like I do. So yeah, that's it. The things I like and I don't like. Would I recommend anyone buy this camera in 2022? And the answer to that is yes, of course. It's still fantastic. Honestly, if you are a landscape photographer, an architecture photographer, or if you're doing shots for estate agents inside the house, you want the dynamic range this gives, this camera is amazing. The detail it gives out with the right lenses is stunning. It really is. It's absolutely stunning. The dynamic range is really helpful in landscape photography. It really helps get it in one shot rather than have to take a bunch of shots, post-process them later, and do that. It makes the workflow a lot easier if you can just bop, done. So yeah, definitely I recommend this to any landscape, astro, architecture photographer out there. If you're shooting portraits, it has eye autofocus that works most of the time. If the subject's too out of frame, like too far from the camera, it will struggle, but it will revert back to face autofocus, so it still works, but it's not the most reliable system in the world. So yeah, there's that. But honestly, yeah, if you're looking for a inexpensive but high performing camera that really delivers a punch in 2022 and beyond, this is worth looking at. And the prices of these have come right down these days. I would know because I'm selling this one right now and the prices have come down quite considerably. Again, it's gonna be sad to see this go, to be honest. I mean, I don't know if any of you out there are the same as me. You get weirdly emotionally attached to inanimate objects like your camera. So I am quite sad to see this go. Let me know in the comments if you're the same, if you've ever sold a piece of camera gear and gone, oh, I would have missed that. So yeah, by the time this video comes out, this camera will be sold and it will be gone to the new owner. So whoever you are, if you see this video, enjoy the camera, please do. It's been great to me and I hope it's going to be great to you. So yeah, that concludes the journey of Gavin and the Sony A7R II. If you've enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe. I might be running a little competition in my next video, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all the things, and let me know in the comment section below. Again, if you've ever been weirdly emotional about getting rid of a camera, I'm sure there's a few of you out there, and I'm not the only weirdo doing that. So that's the review over, long-term review done. It's weird, isn't it? Next is just going to be a small montage of clips of me using the camera over the years. You don't have to stay and watch that, that's fine. This is mostly just for me and playing around with my video editing. So yeah, have fun. I've been Gav from Gav Takes Photos, and I will see you in the next video with a different camera. Bye.